Have you ever wanted to be a veterinarian? Have you ever thought about it? I think most of us have as we were growing up. If you love animals as much as I do, if you ever had a pet dog or cat or fish, anything, you wanted to make sure you could take care of them, and working with animals and taking care of them, I think something we all ultimately wanted to do at some point or another. So today I'm interviewing Josh Harper. Josh is an awesome friend who I actually met just this last year while we were on the set of 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. So Josh is an amazing friend, and I'm glad I got the chance to talk with him, and stick around to the very end to hear some of his tips and advice for how to get into the veterinarian sphere, even if you're just starting out. So let's get into it. All right. Well, Josh, it's awesome to have you on the show, man. For anyone wondering, Josh and I met while we were both doing the musical 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. Was a really fun time. We fought a lot, actually. We were probably the ones who fought the most between all the brothers. But hey, we're still pretty good friends, and so I invited Josh to be on the podcast. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. Most of the fighting was in the script, so
yes, it was. We had to do it. So, Josh, go ahead. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you do for a living, wearing your very nice scrubs.
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Josh Harper. I'm a veterinarian, mixed animal veterinarian. So I practice and work with all kinds of animals, from kittens to draft horses and everything in between. I live in Blackfoot, Idaho. Grew up in northern Utah in a little tiny farming community called Corinne, and have wandered here and there with school and different jobs. And my wife and I have landed in Blackfoot with our family. We've been here for 8 years, almost 9 years now.
That's awesome. Congrats. Go Aggies. I know. I think we're both Aggies fans.
Go Aggies. Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, it's great to have you on to kind of talk about being a veterinarian. Oh, really?
Glad to do it. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Well, go ahead and talk about the kind of your education. You know, I know you went to Utah State. What degree did you get? Any higher education that you had to get for becoming a veterinarian?
Yeah. So, to become a veterinarian, it's a doctorate degree. I went to Utah State. And basically, my major was bioveterinary science with a minor in chemistry. So that basically meant that if I didn't get into vet school, I would have kind of a wide knowledge of a bunch of different things, but not be able to really have a specific career. So I'd have to kind of specialize. I had some nutrition classes. I had some animal management classes. I had some biology and physiology and enough chemistry so that I could get a minor in chemistry. And so after Utah State, I went to Washington State University up in Pullman and was there for 4 years, and that's where I got my doctorate degree. So my official degree is doctorate or doctor of veterinary medicine. It used to be when I went to vet school, you had to have a bachelor's degree in order to get your doctorate. They've changed it now, so all you really have to do is make sure all of your prerequisites are met to be able to apply and get into veterinary school. And I think now you could actually become a veterinarian without having a bachelor's degree.
Really? Oh, that's kind of cool.
It was, about 7.5 years of college. And then I just went out to practice after that. I didn't go on and specialize in any kind of internships or residencies, and I'm not board certified in any particular discipline in veterinary medicine, although that's an option. There are board certified surgeon, there are board certified ophthalmologists and dermatologists and nutritionists. And it's a huge there's a huge variety of things that you can do with a veterinary degree.
Interesting. Did you always kind of figure that you wanted to be a veterinarian? I mean, how did you decide that that's what you wanted to go into?
So, I think one of my core memories was when I would go with my dad and my grandpa and we brand and vaccinate cattle. And to this day, one of my favorite smells, it's not a good smell, but it when you brand cattle, you actually char the hide, cauterize the hide, and so the hair burns. And that burning hair is one of my favorite smells to this day. And so I've always loved animals. I've always loved working with animals and spending time with them. And I like being outside. I like having a wide variety of things to do every day. Doing the same thing over and over and over again. Um, I've had some jobs where that's what I did, and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. So having the variability, the variety, and being able to be outside, and some of the greatest people you ever meet are people that have animals. So yeah, that's kind of what drew me to it. I never really considered doing anything else, and I don't know that I had a dream when I was a kid. Oh, I'm going to be a veterinarian, but um, I did construction. I knew I didn't want to be a construction worker or a contractor, and so it just kind of I don't it's just kind of what I did. Like it wasn't a lifelong dream of mine, but I did it, and
Hmm.
it's been great. I've loved it.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And I think a lot of people have a similar feel. I mean, I knew both of my sisters wanted to be vets when they grew up, at least when they were little girls. And I don't think either. I mean, one of them's in nursing, so kind of similar, medical helping people. And then the other one, she's going into coding.
Hmm.
And so I don't necessarily think everyone has to have this kind of dream when they're a kid, but it's just fascinating to hear when other people kind of decide, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do. Um, did the amount of
Yeah.
schooling ever kind of scare you a little bit? Because going into anything kind of doctorate or medical, there's a lot of schooling, a lot of test taking and whatnot. Did that ever make you nervous at all?
Um, it didn't seem super daunting. Like I didn't look at it and be like, oh my gosh, there's 8 years of school I have to do. It was always just I just approached it a semester at a time. Um, I still to this day, I still have nightmares of, oh man, I got a test tomorrow. I got to get ready for it, and then I can wake up and I don't have it. So, like, I think this is the same stuff that every student that's ever gone to school, whether it's high school or college. You have those dreams of I have this test and I don't know anything about what I'm supposed to be doing, and but school school was always not difficult. It was never really difficult for me. Um, and I guess that that's a blessing. I did have to work hard at it, but um,
Hmm.
I was able to understand a lot of the subjects. Reading and English were probably my worst subjects. Um,
Same.
but I really biology, physiology is super interesting to me. I'd love to learn how things work and how we work and how animals work. And so, um, if I could, I would learn for a living, just because
Yeah.
it's just so fascinating to learn new things. And if I didn't have to write papers or take tests, I would do that full time.
You're all about it. Yeah, I agree. Writing the papers,
Yeah.
English was never my strong suit. I mean, I was okay at it. Like I could squeak by. I'd, get my B or B plus and then move on. But I was big into math. I was big
Hmm.
into science. But yeah, physiology, anatomy, and whatnot. I was like, ew. Like it's fascinating. Don't get me wrong. It's all cool how it all works. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it's gross, man. I'll pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you show me videos when we're at like rehearsals, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you do that for a living.
They're awesome. Oh, dude, that's the best. That's my best party trick. When the
It's
conversation
showing
starts to
videos.
drag a little bit, I was like, "Have you guys ever seen?" And so, yeah, it's fun.
How important do you think having that kind of degree and having kind of a doctorate in veterinarianism, I guess, is for being a vet and working with pets and whatnot?
So, if you are going to be a doctor of veterinary medicine, you obviously have to have that degree. Otherwise, you get thrown in jail. But you don't have to have
Okay.
a doctorate to participate in the veterinary profession, right?
Okay.
Idaho, where I live, you're not required to have a license to be a veterinary assistant, so like a technician. Um, and so you could, we have people that come out of high school and are kennel technicians at the clinic, and they begin to learn about how to restrain animals and how to take care of animals and how to collect vital signs, heart rate, temperature, respiration. And shortly out of high school, it's not uncommon for these assistants to start working at clinics and get some experience and exposure to it that way. So you don't have to have a professional degree or licensure to be involved in veterinary medicine. And then you can look, there are a lot of other professions or jobs tied to animal health and animal well-being. There's um, trainers, and there are um, physical therapists and massage therapists and those types of things where it's more of a like a certificate of training than a degree. Um, I have gone on and actually done some specialized training. So I'm actually certified in veterinary spinal manipulation, which is basic chiropractic, and also acupuncture, traditional Chinese veterinary medicine. Just adding those two um, skills, I guess, to my tool belt. And so
How much bigger are the
uh,
needles for acupuncture for like cows and stuff? Are they like a lot bigger
they're
or
they're longer. They can be longer. Yeah, sure, but yeah,
how often do you do
they
acupuncture
kick a little
for an
harder.
animal? Yeah, I bet.
Uh, so I don't do it a lot, and that's one of the things that I kind of I don't feel like I'm really fluent in acupuncture just because I don't do it every day. Some of the
Hmm.
things that I have found that acupuncture helps really, really well with are pain, especially if like those little short-legged, long-backed dogs, dachshunds and Shih Tzus. They have conditions called intervertebral disc disease, where they'll kind of herniate discs in their back, and it can paralyze
Hmm.
them. That's kind of painful. Diarrhea is a great one. Acupuncture helps a lot with
Really?
diarrhea. I use it. I use it quite a bit in horses that have diarrhea.
Huh.
Yeah,
Things I never would think about, a horse getting acupuncture for
yeah.
diarrhea.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's great.
So what would you say like your daily work looks like? I understand it changes all the time, but like what did you do today, for instance?
So today, um, I'm yeah, I went, and in the fall, a lot of the cattle producers, the ranchers, want to check their herds and make sure that the cows are pregnant. And the cows that aren't pregnant, they don't want to feed them through the winter. It gets expensive, and
Mm.
so I was checking a herd of cows to see which ones were pregnant and how far along they were. We did about 700 cows today, so we
Wow.
started about 8:30 and got done about 4 o'clock.
How many people are on like your team to do that?
So I took one of my assistants with me, and then the rancher had about 5 or 6 people, basically just kind of keeping the cattle moving up through the alleyways and into the chute, so we could, I mean, to do 700 cattle in 7.5 hours, we averaged about 100 cows per hour, and
Hmm.
so they were moving through at a pretty good clip.
Wow. That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
How did
yeah.
I mean I granted I think anatomy and whatnot is a little gross, but how do you check a cow for pregnancy? Because I doubt you do an ultrasound for every single one. Like
Actually, I
when
do.
women are pregnant, really what?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, I
you have a
have I
booth that you
have
set
a
up?
so it's a small portable machine that has a display screen, and then there's a long probe. It's got a curvilinear head on it, so it kind of fans out to get an image, and it's called a transrectal exam. So basically, you have to insert the ultrasound into the rectum of the cow and point it down towards the uterus, the reproductive tract, and just kind of scan it back and forth. And
Hmm.
you can see if the cow is pregnant or open. Open is the term used for not pregnant. And I
Okay.
always verify, like if it's not obvious, I don't see a pregnancy there, then I'll do a manual palpation where I stick my arm in there and try to, and then I can actually feel, retract the uterus and feel all of the reproductive structures inside there. So
Ugh.
I have,
Ew.
I, I, I've got a sleeve on that goes up to my shoulder, so it's pretty clean.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
keeps everything clean.
Oh yeah. I
When
I
I
have the
texted you, like, hey,
cleanest.
I might show up with manure, on my face, but, hey, I'll record it anyway.
Well, if I put a sleeve on my face, I can't breathe. It's
But,
less
hey,
effective.
you're right. You're right. Um, I think the biggest
But
question I
uh,
have when, go ahead.
well, you'd ask kind of what a typical day is, and so
Sure.
again, especially if you're doing large animal veterinary medicine, it varies. There's a lot of variability depending on the time of year. Um, most practices, especially if you're doing some small animal, most practices are going to have surgical procedures done in the morning. They want to make sure that those patients are awake and fully recovered from anesthetic procedures before they send them home. So most of your surgeries are done in the morning,
Hmm.
and then they're outpatient surgeries for the most part, and so they're ready to go home early to mid afternoon after that. And then usually the afternoons are where we have our regular appointments. A coughing dog or a cat with a snotty nose or diarrhea. It's skin itchiness, dog fight, fight wounds, bite wounds, broken bones, those kinds of things. And then kind of throughout the course of the day, depending on if the moon is full or not, we have varying loads of emergency situations. So yeah, so there's always we have a schedule of appointments, and then you kind of always plan on something else you have to kind of squeeze in and make
Yeah,
make work through the
something
course of
popping
the day.
up.
Yeah.
How hard is it to kind of diagnose the animals? Because I feel like that'd be difficult because it's not like, I mean, unless you know how to communicate with them, which I wouldn't put it past you, but what's the best way for like diagnosing a problem?
So I think, we have kind of a benefit in veterinary medicine because animals aren't really going to lie to you. If
That's
if a
fair.
horse has a bellyache, it acts like a horse with a bellyache.
Hmm.
If a horse is lame and has a problem with its leg, then it's going to limp on that leg. It's not going to try to, tough it out, and it's not going to give you. Sometimes the owners will give you, Google diagnoses, but a lot of times it's very straightforward. So every appointment begins with a physical exam. The first, we get a history from the animal, what's going on, and how has that changed from the animal's normal behavior. And certain aspects of the physical exam are really important. The signalment of the animal, male, female, are they intact or have they been spayed or neutered? How old are they? What's their diet like? And so, we get a more of a detailed history on that with our physical exam, and then the physical exam, heart rate, respiration, temperature, weight, body condition. We look at the gums and check hydration status and capillary refill times, and then you kind of get good at palpating, feeling for things, trying to feel for abnormalities. The dog can't say it hurts here, but with words, but sometimes you find that spot and they use their mouth in other ways to let you know that it hurts there. And so,
Like, is there a sleeve for that too, or?
uh, we have thick leather welding gloves. We sometimes will
So
use.
yes, all right.
Yeah, yeah. But a lot, in vet school, they always said this this kind of phrase: if you hear footsteps in the hall, if you hear hoof beats in the hall, look for a horse, not a zebra, right? And so what that means is you're going to have a lot of common everyday problems that are going to happen most of the time. And so when I'm seeing a patient and I'm making up a differential list of what could potentially be going on, I'm going to put the more common things at the top. If I have a 6-month-old puppy that is throwing up, chances are it's not going to have an abdominal tumor. So it'll still be on the list, but it's going to be way down. But if I have a 14-year-old dog that all of a sudden is not keeping anything down, that potential differential diagnosis of an abdominal tumor is going to move up the list. And so, we always want to make a list of potential differential diagnoses. And the thing is, with animals, we don't have the type of health insurance to cover expenses and things like that you do in human medicine. So while the best practice in medicine is to do every diagnostic test, and we do offer that to every client, most of them aren't interested in spending $700 on diagnostics. And so
Right.
while we offer that to them, they also want to know, well, what's going to give me the most information. So, we do a lot of blood work, CBC, which is an acronym for complete blood count. And so it shows you all the components of the blood: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. How many of the white blood cells do we have? Do we have a lot of neutrophils? Do we have a lot of basophils? And those different, one raising or lowering can point out some potential things going on. And then we also do blood chemistry panels, which are a little more specific to different organ systems. Liver function, enzymes, kidney function, electrolytes. If there's enzymes that show muscle lysis or something like that, different things are going to show up in those blood panels. We have diagnostic ultrasound, and then also X-rays, radiographs. I don't have an MRI or a CT machine at the clinic, but there are those more advanced imaging technologies as well.
That's cool. And I really like that phrasing when you said, look for a horse, not a zebra. Because I remember when I was trying to pick up some drawing or whatnot, that was kind of one of the big things is draw what you actually see, not what you think you see. And kind of going into that, it's take everything you can at the beginning and then try not to, make problems where there aren't any, is kind of what I get from that. So I think that's really cool. That's a fun way to look at it.
So sometimes you will find a zebra, and those are really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a fun day. What would you say is probably the most difficult part of being a veterinarian?
So I mean, the obvious answer is going to be when it comes to those end of life decisions. Those can be difficult, and can be emotionally draining. So while that's hard, some of my favorite moments and times have been during those end of life situations, because you see how much of an impact an animal has on a person. I've seen old gruff cowboys, that could swear a string to make a sailor blush, and were just gruff and grumpy, just break down when their dog was done, when it was time for the end of life of their dog. And so I wouldn't say that that's a pleasant, but those are, a lot of those situations are really special. So, and I guess, that part of it, being able to see that connection, that human animal bond is what they call it, makes those end of life things bearable. So I don't know that I'd say that that's the most difficult part of my job. For me, the most difficult part of my job, I think, is, again, because we see common things very commonly, trying to be genuine. It may be the 8th time I've talked about skin hypersensitivity, that day, but it's the first time that client has heard it, and it's their dog. And so trying to make that genuine for everybody, make it so that because it is important, but if you've said it 9 times that day already, it's
Right.
hard to to keep that genuine. So I think that's tough. Um, and then yeah, I think that, and and then there's a lot of times too where things just go wrong. Despite our best efforts, sometimes things just go wrong. I had one of my mentors, my first boss, as I was kind of learning the ropes of being a veterinarian, he said, something you got to know is, sometime in your career, something is going to die and it's going to be your fault. Oh, excuse me. He said, obviously, we don't want that. Obviously, it's going to be upsetting and difficult if that happens, but you need to realize that that's going to happen. Be ready for it so you can deal with it, and obviously do your best to make sure it doesn't happen. But even if you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, it's life. Something is going to die and it's going to be your fault. And so just to know that kind of that is coming or was coming, it helps when those types of crises and embarrassing situations happen. So
Yeah. Kind of like making the
yeah.
decision beforehand, knowing something could happen. And I mean, we all make mistakes, and it sucks when it does. But how do you bounce back from something like that? What have you done to kind of help you get back into, what, I'm really helping people. I'm like really helping a member of a person's family. I mean, because that's what most pets are.
Yeah. Well, luckily, thankfully, a lot of the times it's from the animal owners. They're very understanding for the most part. Obviously, sometimes it's really difficult and it can be hard. But a lot of the time, the owners are completely understanding and they do a lot of comforting. So I really do appreciate that. Sometimes it takes time.
Well, kind of talking about the most rewarding part of you being a vet. What's the thing you look forward to every day when you get to go to work?
Uh, the thing I look forward to most is helping helping these owners, these pet parents, or helping them kind of understand a little bit better about how to make their animals' lives better. There's a whole lot of information out there. There's a whole lot of products out there, different procedures, different policies, and obviously I have my own biases. And so to be able to, especially these really, lifelong complicated things that they don't seem to have answers for, giving them options and opportunities. And that's really, especially when it comes to chiropractic care, that's why I got into doing chiropractic as a part of my practice. Was I just got tired of not really truly being able to help. You know, they would feel better as long as the medication was there, but as soon as the prescription ran out, the problems would come back. And that was really, it was frustrating. It was not rewarding, and I didn't really feel like I was performing the service that I wanted to be able to, you know, have wellness and well-being, improve that quality of life and quality of well-being in my patients.
What would you say is a good resource for pet owners to kind of find that information to take care of their pets? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things that we as pet owners kind of do wrong. Is there something that you notice frequently that people kind of, I don't know, just don't know about?
Uh, yeah,
Okay,
I
what
guess
what are
I
some of those?
probably the biggest one is weight. We have such a huge pandemic of or epidemic. You can call it pandemic of overweight pets and animals, and I really think probably the biggest thing that is overlooked or just kind of, thrown out there as a one size fits all is nutrition.
Hmm.
And there's not a one size fits all. Um, and I don't want to make any enemies here, but dog food is not the best food for a dog. But it is, it's better nutrition than if all that dog is getting is the table scraps, right? But dog food is essentially like eating highly processed food every day, all day long. And so there are some diseases and some things that come up because of that. Um, Big ones typically being weight issues, metabolic issues, allergy or hypersensitivity issues. And so uh, in dogs and cats, and then horses and cattle, um, we wind up with a whole lot of other more metabolic issues. Again, you can have metabolic issues. You could have some really life-threatening issues, especially with horses if they can get certain conditions like laminitis, where you get inflammation of the connective tissue in the foot that basically cripples them, and it can get so severe that their foot will fall off. And so colic, which is kind of the generic term for a bellyache, but colic in a horse really can be life threatening. And so, from a nutritional standpoint, what can we do? I really feel like, honestly, our first and best medicine is nutrition
Hmm.
and activity and exercise. And that's kind of, I've kind of come to that conclusion based on my, additional training. But, the best pharmacist that an animal or a person has is a healthy immune system and good nutrition. And so I could be the best surgeon in the world, but if that animal doesn't have the proper nutrients and is not, metabolically and physiologically healthy, they won't heal. And so um, that kind of led me more towards I don't know if I'd call it an alternative route, but definitely more of a holistic, trying to maximize and unlock the body's potential to be whole and vibrant and healthy.
I can't remember who said it or where I read it, but something about how a doctor, their whole goal is to basically help the body do its job. It's not like they're essentially solving any
Yep.
problem, but the body is really good at healing itself, but just making sure that the body has the
Yeah.
ability and capability to do that. And I'm sure that applies to animals as well.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I'm sure the
100%.
diet and more exercise, I think that works for humans as well. Um, it's probably
I don't know.
probably a good thing, just all around. I
Yeah.
want to kind of shift into
But it's
maybe a little
hard. I
bit
mean,
more
it's
of.
hard.
Oh, I agree. There's weeks where I get up and I'm like, man, I'm gonna go on a run. I'm gonna work out 3 times a week, and then the week goes by and I'm like, it's really nice to sleep in and be lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I want to kind of shift into advice for maybe people looking to being a veterinarian or working at a clinic, kind of with you. What is some of
Mhm.
the traits or things that stand out to you if someone were to apply to work with you, like at your clinic as a one of the helpers that you were talking about earlier, one of those associates?
So I think if you look at any profession or especially if it's a service oriented, and I think veterinary medicine is a service oriented profession, um, there are basic things, basic traits that will help you anywhere you go, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're a lawyer or you're a plumber or an electrician or whatever. And that is the number one thing I think is the ability to work, the ability to take on a job and do it and do your best at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's all too often it's what are my responsibilities? Okay, I've checked every box. They're all done, right? But and now I'm done. And while yes, that it does kind of fit the bill, um, I think the best advice is, did I do my job and did I do it right? Number one, did I do it right? And then did I do it the best that I can?
Hmm.
I've got two older daughters. One's a sophomore at college and the other one's a senior in high school. And both of them worked at the clinic as kennel technicians. So basically you come in and you feed dogs and you walk them and they poop and you pick up their poop and you clean their kennels. And then you also make sure that, laundry and blankets and stuff like that at the clinic are folded up and done and clean and ready for the next day. And they, it's just, it's not a glamorous job. They did not like that
No.
job at all. And I said, well, if I guess what I told them is I said, if you want this to be the worst job you ever have, then get really good at it. Because if you can get really good at horrible jobs, you can get really good at giving your best effort when it's not glamorous, nobody sees it, and you really could kind of get away by cutting corners. If you get really good at this, you will excel in whatever you do. And so just just having that work ethic and then sense of pride in what you do. And then, looking around and seeing what else can be done, who else can I help. Um, the other thing I think, especially for younger people, high school, college, undergraduate, is get in there and see if it's something you like. The worst thing would be, to invest 8 years going to school and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this degree and go to your first job and realize you hate veterinary medicine. You might love
Right.
animals, you might love biology and physiology and all of that stuff, but you can't stand what happens in a veterinary practice. And every practice I've ever worked at is very open to having, you know, younger people come and shadow and learn about it. And so that, I think that's a very underutilized opportunity for, especially for high school kids. I mean, even if you have a job, you still have a lot of time available. Go find something you think you might be interested in and go spend time there. Go ask an accountant, hey, can I come and just kind of get a feel of what you're doing? Or, spend time sweeping the floors at a bank. Or, if you want to do esthetology or you want to do physical therapy, so many of those people are just willing and excited to kind of share with you what they do. It doesn't
Yeah.
cost you anything. And you may even get a job and get paid to learn about it and see if it's something you want to do. And so um, that's what I would recommend. And then the other thing, especially if you're dealing with veterinary medicine, spend a lot of time with animals. You can love animals a lot and not know how to keep yourself safe or them safe,
Hmm.
especially in a veterinary situation. Most of these animals come in hurt, injured, scared. And so, they're not only going to potentially injure somebody there, an owner or you, but, you know, these animals have such a high drive for survival, they may do something that actually injures themselves. And so you can't read or study in a book how to read the body language of an animal and be able to respond appropriately,
Yeah.
especially, a 2,000-pound cow or bull or an 1,100-pound horse. If you can't, read that body language and make sure you're always in a safe position and that they're always in a safe position. Those are skills that are learned by interacting with and associating with and spending time with animals on a regular basis.
Yeah. I think that's just a huge, huge thing for almost any career is get involved and get familiar with it, no matter where you are. Because I think a lot of people feel like they get stuck, like they chose their degree or anything they did in college, they graduate, and then they're like, well, I'm stuck in this field. There's nothing else I know how to do. And just spending time with those people, like you said, I think there's volunteer opportunities. And especially that's something I've learned just in doing this show is when I talk with people, the things that they're looking for in people who they want to work with is not necessarily all of these credentials and degrees and things that you've accomplished. It's how willing are you to put in the effort to learn and to ask questions and just to, are you a pleasant person to be around? And that can get you so far in life, I think. Just networking, working with people, getting to know them, and building those relationships, I think is huge for just about anybody looking for a great career path.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Well, perfect. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of join me and share your story. I think it's been awesome. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, though, I always have to ask because it's my favorite part of the
Yes.
show. What is the funniest story that you have ever had in your working career? It could be a job that you have right now, or it could be something you did in high school. I just want to know something to make me laugh.
Oh, well, so I mean, there's always those situations and circumstances that stand out, and this one didn't happen to me. And you know, so kind of background in
Go ahead.
veterinary medicine, a lot of the cool stuff has some grossness to it, or some things that might not be um, uh, might not go over smoothly in most public spheres. I
Oh
want to
my
tell you, but here's
goodness.
one of the. It's not funny, but here's one of my favorite cool stories about one of my
Okay. Yeah,
cases.
this is one of your party tricks. I've heard about these.
About so about 4 years into practicing medicine, I was done. Like I said, I was so frustrated that I couldn't really help these animals. All I'd spent my money to do was to be able to prescribe medication, and if the clinic across town could sell it for cheaper, they went there.
Hmm.
And so I got certified in chiropractic care. I had an uncle who was a chiropractor, and he did some amazing things. And so I invested the money, or the practice I worked at invested the money and sent me to to get that training. And I was just done and got my certification, was starting to kind of advertise that I was doing chiropractic care. And I had this couple bring in their chocolate Labrador dog. His name was Kodiak. And he was like 5, so he wasn't a young dog, but he wasn't an old dog either. But Kodiak was an English bred chocolate Labrador, so they're really the kind of the thicker dogs. They use them a lot for water retrieval, so they're kind of heavy set anyway.
Okay.
And Kodiak hurt. He couldn't run. He couldn't do anything. His owner said, we think he's afraid of the water. He lived. There was 4 other Labradors that lived in that house with him, and we were up in northern Idaho, and so there's a lot of rivers and a lot of outdoor recreation to do. And they would drive to the river and lift him out of the truck, and he would walk down to the river, and he would sit on the riverbank while all the other dogs would swim. He'd just sit and watch. And then he would walk back up to the truck, and they'd lift him back into the truck. And the next day he couldn't move. They had to carry him out on a blanket to go to the bathroom. And so they were telling me all this, and they said, we've tried all of the carprofen, the Rimadyl, we've tried the pain meds, we've tried everything, and he just hurts, and we want to try this. And so I adjusted Kodiak, and it wasn't anything spectacular. Like, he didn't have a dislocated hip or anything like that. And they said, well, that was awesome. When do you want to see him again? And you'll find out with professions, a lot of the time there's not a prescription on follow up, and a lot of it comes from your experience and experience of others. That's why networking is important. And so I said, oh, well, let's see him again in 2 weeks. And so they said, great, come to my house and you can adjust my horses and we'll look at Kodiak again. So I went to their house in 2 weeks and worked on the horses. And after the horses, I said, well, how's Kodiak? And they said, well, he's getting stiff again. I think it's time for another adjustment. And I said, well, how did the first one do? And they said, well, after the first adjustment, we brought him home, and the next day he swam for 2 hours, and we've taken him on hikes, and he's jumping over logs and all of this stuff. But he's starting to get a little bit stiff, and that just blew my mind. Like it was the coolest thing. This dog walking 100 yards and sitting by the river would cripple him, but if his body is moving right, he he becomes a pup again. And that's happened over and over. again, especially with the chiropractic care, just making sure the body can take care of itself, and it's amazing what it can do to recover and to recuperate. So